Good day everyone, my name is Jessa G. De Los Reyes and I will be discussing about the introduction to portfolio assessment as part of our ULOA for week 67 of our EDUC 107 class. But first I would like to give a little expectation of what the coverage of my report will be. First, we have the definition of portfolio. Second, we have the definition of portfolio assessment. And lastly, we will be talking about the introduction to portfolio assessment or the general context of what portfolio assessment really is. But first, I would like to quote Dr. Helen Burry before continuing to the discussion. Dr. Helen Burry once said that testing gives you a snapshot. Portfolios give you a movie. Now, I hope that by the end of my discussion, everyone will be able to make sense why Dr. Helen Burry claimed that portfolios give you a movie. But in order to do that, I will be discussing the definition of portfolio first. In a general sense, portfolio is a set of pictures by someone or photographs of their work that they use when entering competitions or applying for work. But in the academe, especially in the area of student assessment, this refers to a purposeful collection of students' work that exhibits the students' efforts, progress, and achievements in one or more areas. Now, to continue my discussion, I would like to give the definition of portfolio assessment. Now, what is portfolio assessment? Well, it is an assessment based on the systematic collection of learner work that represents competencies, exemplary work, or the learner's developmental progress. This refers to the assessment that utilizes portfolio to assess and evaluate students' performance. Now, I know that everyone's actually familiar with the terms portfolio and portfolio assessment because I bet that everyone has had an experience in making a portfolio and being assessed by the teachers. So I guess that everyone will then be able to understand the general context of portfolio assessment. Once again, portfolio assessment is a purposeful collection of student work that exhibits the students' efforts, progress, and achievements in one or more areas. Now, what are these areas that the portfolio assessment includes? First, we have the collection of students' participation in selecting content. Second, we have the criteria for selection. And lastly, we have the criteria for judging merit and evidence of student self-reflection. Now, it is to be noted that every material being added to the portfolio must be carefully planned in order to achieve what must be demonstrated by the student. Hence, portfolios are considered as complex materials which continuously encourage students to become active participants in the academe. This would then be their venue of growth and development in learning particular subjects and tasks. So, as the reporter of this coverage, I would like to extend my invitation to everyone as future educators. We must also, starting from now, be able to join webinars, events, or any activities that would then be good for our future portfolios that we will be presenting to our future bosses as educators. Now, that is the end of my report, and I would like to thank you everyone for listening, and I will then be leaving the rest of the discussion of portfolio assessment to my colleagues. Once again, I am Jessa G. De Los Reyes. Thank you for listening.
Good day, everybody. I am Ivan Clark A. Acosta. This is the continuation of the report of our group, which is all about portfolio assessment. And my report is all about the features and principles of portfolio assessment. But before that, I will just review a short recap about the introduction of the portfolio assessment. So what is portfolio? So portfolio is the collection of the student's work which exhibits the student's progress, the student's work, and the student's achievements throughout the whole period in a specific area or a specific subject. However, the portfolio assessment is all about, of course, evaluating and assessing the progress of the student using portfolio. So that's portfolio and portfolio assessment. So now let's proceed to the four different features and principles of portfolio assessment. The first principle and feature of portfolio assessment is that portfolio is a form of assessment that is done by the students together with their teacher. Although portfolio is created by the student, they are still supervised and guided by their teacher. The teacher will serve as the guide in planning, execution, and evaluation of portfolio. Both teacher and students have the same pace on the overall objective about the constructing of the portfolio. Second principle and feature about portfolio assessment is that portfolio represents a selection of what the students believe are included among those possible collection of things. It's either the quizzes, the essays, other projects, paperworks, and etc. are related to the concept and idea that are being studied. It is also the responsibility of the teacher to assist his or her student in actually choosing the set of choices among those possible collections in creating the portfolio. Next principle and feature is that portfolio provides a sample of works of the student's growth over time. So the portfolio is consist of the compilation of the works of the student from their achievements, accomplishment, and all of their activities. That is why it will serve as their record or the tracking record on whether they need to develop or they need to improve or continue all of their performance. Using the portfolio, they can able to identify what are the strengths and the weaknesses of their work. And that is the most important thing about the portfolio because the student can reflect about what are the things that they need to improve about their work. Like for example, in their essays, they can read their about the grammars and want to develop it. So use a portfolio, they can be able to track those things and be developed in the future. The last principle and feature of portfolio assessment is more focused on the assessment. The criteria on assessing and selecting the contents of portfolio must be very clear for the student and the teacher at the beginning of the process to avoid some problems. If the instructions or the criteria is not clear, there is a tendency that there will be unessential things or unessential files that will be included in the portfolio. Those are the principles and features about portfolio assessment, the characteristics, the beliefs, and the things about the portfolio assessment. Portfolio assessment is one of the most authentic and non-traditional assessment in education. That is why a lot of teachers use this in assessing their students.
Hello and good day to everyone. I am Desiree G. Cuenza from the Group 3, and today I will be discussing the first five purposes of portfolio of assessment. Now, before I proceed, let us first have a short recap. Now, when you say portfolio, this refers to um, a collection of students' work that exhibits the students' efforts, progress, achievements, and more. And the portfolio assessment, this is the type of assessment that utilizes the portfolio in order to assess and evaluate the performance of the students. Now, according to Burgin and Baki, the purpose of portfolio assessment is to for the students to be able to reflect on their performance, to show their weaknesses and strengths, and for the educator to observe their progress during the learning process, and for the students to be encouraged to take responsibilities for their own learning. Now, according to Sosnowski 2018, the portfolio assessment, this provides an opportunity for them to select a progression of work to demonstrate knowledge of a topic. Now, you might be wondering, why should we opt for a portfolio assessment? Now, here are some of the purposes of conducting portfolio assessment inside classrooms. Now, as what I've mentioned earlier, I will be discussing the first five while the sixth and onwards will be discussed by the next reporter. So first, the portfolio assessment matches assessment to teaching. Second, portfolio assessment has clear goals. Third, the portfolio assessment gives profile of learners' abilities in terms of depth, growth, and breadth. Fourth is that the portfolio assessment is a tool for assessing a variety of skill not normally testable in a single setting for traditional setting. On fifth, a portfolio assessment develops awareness of students' own learning. Okay, so let us proceed. Now, on portfolio, as I've mentioned earlier, this is an product or accumulated product from the different classroom activities. It could be discussions, involvement, and participation of the learners. Now, this type of assessment, this is not only limited to measuring the cognitive aspect or the cognitive level of the students, but this also assess the abilities formed by the students during those said class activities or class engagements. Therefore, the portfolio assessment, this matches the assessment to teaching. Okay, so next, the portfolios are planned and discussed prior the proper instruction. And therefore, the goals or the end goals are already clear to the students and they already have this idea as to what product that should be sufficed or that should be provided. And therefore, the students in this or in this portfolio assessment, they are in control of what they would like to include, and therefore this raises the possibility that the goals are or the set goals in the beginning would be achieved. And so the portfolio assessment has clear goals. Third is that the portfolio assessment gives a profile of learners' abilities in terms of depth, breadth, and goals. Now, when you say depth, this type of assessment or the portfolio assessment, this enables the students to be able to show a work that their quality is not compromised because they are given ample time and that pressure is absent in terms of looking for resources for their work. In terms of breadth, they are able to showcase their different skills and abilities through that said output. And lastly, in terms of growth, the assessment, this could demonstrate the development of and improvement of the learner through or over the time. Fourth is that the portfolio assessment is a tool for assessing a variety of skill not normally testable in a single setting or traditional testing. So in this type of assessment, it showcases not only those written works such as those quizzes and essays and etc. However, this showcase a wide range of outputs from those written, oral, and graphic outputs as well. Fifth, the students are able to form their own realization or reflection about their learning progress. And since the goals are already clear at the very start of the instruction, the students are able to monitor as to if they were able to achieve those goals or not, and that they are able to assess themselves based on the given goals. And they can achieve this as they progress because they will continually refer to the set of goals and objectives that were set from the very beginning or from the prior instruction. So that is all for the first five of the purposes of portfolio assessment. Now, if you have any questions, don't be shy to raise them. Thank you for listening, and God bless you all.
Hi everyone, I am Athena Fernandez, and the five purposes of a portfolio have previously been covered with you by Miss Desiree. Now I'm going to continue Miss Desiree's report on the purposes of portfolio. Number 6. Portfolio assessment caters to individuals in a heterogeneous class. So inside the classroom, heterogeneity comes from a variety of backgrounds, capacities, intelligences, and even learning styles. This evaluation's flexibility includes an open-ended sort of assessment that indicates our students' capacity to study in a variety of learning styles and expression at their current level. So when using portfolios as a teaching tool, you don't have to constantly utilize them to demonstrate the finished product. So a portfolio, on the other hand, could be used now to encourage students to document the learning path, the failures and reflections that lead to meaningful learning. So in addition, a portfolio can be used to show development such as overall improvement or mastery of an idea. So in a metaphorical sense, this is an area where students demonstrate how they went from a blank canvas to a finished work of art. So that's an example. So you can incorporate a number of modern assessment approaches into portfolios to evaluate ilahang progress, which can be more effective and relevant to the students than a grade or a score. So documenting learning is one of the purposes of a portfolio in education. So students keep a record of their daily mga activities and magsulat sila ng mga reflections on what they've learned or how they felt about it. So the major goal of using a portfolio in this way is to get students to think about how they approach things and how they felt about them and how they learned over time. Okay, number 7. Portfolio assessment develop social skills. So throughout the student's academic career, portfolios reflect how much he or she has learned and worked hard. So they provide valuable information about student progress and mastery skills, beside providing great information on how students learn o unsa ka importante to him or to her in the learning process. This data also gives vital information about how each students learn. So we would evaluate how isa ka estudyante or a child interacts with others. So reacts with social situations and perceives social situations in order not to help them build their social skills and labi na confidence. So in this type of portfolio assessment, as a future educator, kita as a future educator, assessing these areas kay makatabang sa ila to determine where a person's challenges may exist. Next one is portfolio assessment develops independent and active learners. So, ang student can use portfolio evaluation para makita niya how well they're doing, to see where they're weak and where they're strong, to see they're progressing in their learning, and to help them to take ownership of their own learning. Now, why assessment develops independent learner? Because through it or through assessing them, they will be able to assess their own learning and make them independent and active learner. Number 9, portfolio assessment can improve motivation for learning and thus achievement. So when students are empowered, they become highly motivated if they are able to demonstrate their own accomplishments and work. So portfolios help students na to be more autonomous and it will foster them or foster their critical thinking and enhance motivation. So portfolio also encourages them not to acquire, example, English as a second language. So by encouraging them to be independent and critical thinkers. So the technique also assists na sa students internalizing their information. It also allowing them na to store what they've learned and how they've learned into a collection of resources for future use. It is more likely that pupils will do better next time if they evaluate their own work and identify their own strength and flaws. So, if ma-identify na nila ilang strength and weaknesses, it will help them na to do better or to be better students or pupils. Number 10 and last, portfolio assessment provides opportunity for students-teacher dialogue. So teacher can have a better understanding of their pupils by taking this test. So because portfolios allow sa teacher to gather data from a variety of sources, including na student parents, friends, teachers, and also ilang kaugalingon. So it allows them to have accurate information on their students. So they're crucial for evaluating the outcomes and processes of students' learning. So a portfolio can provide them sample of one's progress throughout time. It also allows one to perceive teaching as a continuous process of learning, experimentation, and reflection. So teacher also can use portfolios not to see if their students can apply what they've learned to new situation or some any subject areas. So portfolio also can also be used in non-school settings to assess ilang mga estudyante in work and in learning. Okay, now let's recap the 10 purposes of portfolio assessment. First, portfolio assessment matches assessment to teaching. Second, portfolio assessment has clear goals. Third, portfolio assessment gives a profile of learners' abilities in terms of depth, breadth, and growth. Number 4, portfolio assessment is a tool for assessing a variety of skills not normally testable in single setting for traditional testing. Number 5, develops awareness of students' own learning and portfolio assessment. Number 6, portfolio assessment caters individuals in heterogeneous class. Number 7, portfolio assessment develops social skills. Number 8, portfolio assessment develops independent and active learners. Number 9, portfolio assessment can improve motivation for learning and thus achievement. And lastly, portfolio achievement assessment provides opportunity for student-teacher dialogue. These 10 purposes of portfolio assessment enable students to exhibit their true performance, their weak and strong areas, their development during their learning process, and as well as encourages them to take ownership of their own learning. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you've learned something about our topic. I will now give the virtual floor to our next reporter.
So essential elements of portfolio. First is the cover letter, evidence of students' learning and progress. So cover letter is written document that is typically included with a job application, and it summarizes the applicant's qualifications and interest in the open position. Including a cover letter with your portfolio, it is a good approach to summarize the crucial elements such as your abilities and experience that make you a good fit for a certain position. Next is the table of contents. It is a list of items or parts of the portfolio with numbered pages. So, table of contents specifically commonly found on a page before the commencement of a written book. A table of contents is essentials for the reader's orientation. So, next is the entries. This can be either core or optional entries. An entry is in a journal list, ledger, or reference book that is written or printed. The entries in a portfolio might show growth and learning across all language, domain skills, or they can focus on a single skill such as a literature, appreciation, or writing. So let us first discuss what is the core entries. These are elements that students must include in their portfolio. This will be required for each student and will provide a common base from which to make decisions on assessment. Next is the optional entries. These are elements of students' choice that will represent the student's uniqueness. So in short, core is the items of students' choice, while the optional is the things that students must include. So number 5, the dates on all entries to facilitate growth over time. So it is important to put the dates to the portfolio because it allows the students to represent their true performance by displaying their weak and strong domains. Number 5, drafts of oral and written products in revised revision. Next is the reflections. These contain a brief rationale of what the student feels about his or her progress and relate about their performance and alike. So reflection isn't about an afterthought in your learning portfolio or teaching approach. It it was focused on self-awareness, personal and professional growth, and improved teaching techniques, and they're all aided by effective reflection. So next, students can reflect upon some or all of the following. A. What did I learn from it? B. What do I want to improve in the item? Third, what were the problem areas? Next, how do I feel about my performance? Lastly, why did I choose this item?
Good day guys, my name is Evander Rodriguez, the next reporter. And now I am going to discuss the next topic, which is the stages in implementing portfolio assessment. Stage 1. It talks about identifying teaching goals through portfolio. The first step is to establish the teaching goals. It is very important that at this stage the goals are clear about what the teacher hopes to achieve in teaching. These goals will guide the learners in the selection and assessment of students' work for the portfolio. In order to do this, the teacher should ask himself or herself to the question, what do I want the students to learn? Stage 2. It is all about introducing the idea of portfolio assessment to your class. Portfolio as part of performance assessment or the alternative assessments. Students are more acquainted of the traditional mode of assessment. It is very important for the teacher to introduce the concept to the class. You can start by explaining the word portfolio. Thus, explaining to students how it works, what needs to be done, how will they be assessed, its importance, and find ways to introduce this new assessment method to them by inviting people such as artists, painters, photographers, and even teachers' personal portfolio can be presented to students to understand the context of making portfolio. Stage 3. It talks about specification of portfolio content. In this stage, you must specify to them what they have to include in their portfolio. You also have to specify for each entry how each entry will be assessed. Entries can take many forms as written and video recording items, artifacts, dialogue, and journals. The scoring rubrics, which will be used in performing the task, must also be presented to the students. Thus, inform your students about the necessary information they need to know about the portfolio to be submitted. So, teachers must acquaint the students with the scoring guide or rating scales before performing the task. Stage 4. It talks about giving clear and detailed guidelines for portfolio presentation. The teacher must therefore set clear guidelines and detailed information on how the portfolios will be presented. This stage is important because sometimes there are confusions if the guidelines wasn't clear. Thus, the teacher must be clear about the guidelines of presenting the portfolio, the dates of each submission, and the importance of each attachments or entries. This is very important so that the students can ensure that um, that they fully understand or comprehend on what they need to do. Stage 5. It talks about informing key school officials, parents, and other stakeholders. It is important for you to notify your department head, dean, or principal. This serves as a precaution in case students will later complain about your new assessment procedure. Note, do not attempt to use a portfolio assessment method without notifying your school head. The last stage, stage 6, it talks about development of the portfolio. The support of the teachers to the students in creating the portfolio is necessary. With this, teachers can achieve this with the emphasis of teamwork in the development of portfolio. Some of the class time be devoted to student-teacher dialogues and conferences with other teachers in relation to the task of preparing the portfolio. And that's all, and thank you.
So, hi guys. I am Daniel Gabriel B. Diamante and I am the next reporter. So, the next topic is all about types of portfolio. To those who didn't know what is portfolio, so portfolio is a collecting of students' work which gives evidence to show how the students can meet the specified learning outcomes. Also, portfolio is a development process, thus, it is not only the product that the student or teacher assess upon, but also the learning process in which the student develops during the given period. So, it means that the portfolio is an assessment method that monitors the growth and development of the student's learning. So there are a lot and different types of portfolio, but in this discussion, you will know the three common types of portfolio. So first, we have documentation portfolio. So, documentation portfolio is an approach involves a collection of work over time showing growth and improvement reflecting students' learning of identified outcomes. This portfolio is also called as the growth portfolio, and this portfolio must include the weakest and the best output of the learner. So, uh, documentation portfolio is focuses on the development and improvement of students' learning during a given period of time. So it often contains a range of brainstorm list to finish products. So example of that is collage, poems, stories, and other construction projects. So next, we have process portfolio. So this portfolio, in contrast, demonstrates all phases of the learning process. This is very useful as this show how students integrate specific knowledge or skills and progress towards both basic and advanced mastery. In other words, process portfolio is similar to documentation portfolio, in which it contains all evidences required to prove the learning outcomes in the given time. Yes, time. In addition, it integrates reflection and higher cognitive activities. So it emphasizes more on metacognitive function and encourages students to become active participants in understanding their own learning. So the example of that is reflecting journals and also diaries. So next, we have showcase portfolio. So in this portfolio only shows the best work through the help of a teacher. Student selection of the students' outputs and products. With this, it is a type of portfolio is best used for summative evaluation of students' mastery of key curriculum outcomes. So, it is a complete work should be included. So, in other words, showcase portfolio contains products that demonstrate how capable the owner is at any given moment, or in other words, they focuses on demonstration and also performance. So the example of that is like for example, the teacher supposed to have a kind of business activity or just like selling. So the teacher will see if the students have a good or a bad performance. So, or the teacher will suppose a storytelling activity that the students tell the story of what happened to them when they were selling or doing the activity. So, that would be all, and thank you. Bye.
Good morning, everyone. Before I will start my report, let me introduce myself. By the way, my name is Ryan Che Carion, and I will be the last reporter of this group. Okay, so now that we have already understand the concept of portfolio and portfolio assessment, we will now proceed on the last part of this discussion, wherein we will be talking about how to assess and evaluate a portfolio. Okay, and also what are the things that we should consider in assessing and evaluating. portfolio. Okay? So when we talk about the process of assessing and evaluating portfolio, there must be a certain detailed rating criteria, wherein this criteria may be evolved to evaluate the finished portfolio presented by the students. Okay, I think lahat naman ng task na binibigay sa student, there is a criteria. Since this criteria will serve as a guide to them on what are the things that must be achieved in a certain task. Okay, so in choosing or in creating criteria, you could use this following. Number one, we have here thoughtfulness. It includes the evidence of students monitoring their own comprehension. And we have this metacognitive reflection, which means a student's way of thinking in order to grow. And we have also these productive habits of mind. Okay, in the second one, we have also understanding and application of key processes wherein especially it talks about on how the students follows the instruction, on what are the content, construction, and organization of portfolio. And also we have this growth and development in relation to the key curriculum expectancies and indicators. So in short, it is the expected outcomes of the portfolio. And then the fourth one, we have this completeness, correctness, and appropriateness. So it talks about if all the students' works were presented in the portfolio and the correctness and appropriateness of the product and processes presented in the portfolio. And lastly, we have also the diverse of entries wherein it talks about how the student uses multiple formats of to demonstrate achievement of designated performance standards. So it talks about the students' creativity and also their personal type of organizing things or organizing their output. Okay, so those are the criteria that you could use in creating, in assessing and evaluating portfolio. Now, here are the big ideas in assessing and evaluating portfolio. So in assessing and evaluating portfolio, teacher and students must work together and agree on the criteria to be applied. So this criteria must be agreed prior to the development of the portfolio, since based on what I have said earlier, this will serve as a student's guide, and this would also be the teacher's basis for evaluating portfolio. And this criteria is very important, especially on having unified way for assessment, as this enables to create specific standard. And then one of the significant aspect of portfolio assessment is this what we call collaborative approach, wherein the students and teacher works together to identify significant concept and processes that should be captured in a portfolio. And then collaboration among students and teacher will allow them to determine the areas to be observed. And then this will also enable them in showing their strength and weaknesses and to observe the students' progress during the learning process. So it would also encourage the student to take responsibilities on their own learning. So after we assess and evaluate the portfolio, there is what we call effective feedbacking. Now, this effective feedbacking will allow the students to have the idea whether they are on the right track or they are in need of intervention. So that's all for our report about portfolio and portfolio assessment. I hope that you have learned something and apply it as a future educator someday. Thank you so much for listening and have a great day.